Welcome to part 6 of building the DJH G5 starter kit, and today we are going to do page 6 of the instructions, which consists of the cab interior. If you remember yesterday, we did various things to do with the foot plate, and as you can see I have completed what I said I'd do. I've stuck the lamp irons on using super glue, and I've soldered all the pipe connections, and I've done all the footsteps. So the cab interior consists of 6 white metal castings. You have the substrate for building it all on, the plate for building it all on. You have the cab rear, you have the cab floor, you have the back head, which has got everything cast on it. You have the tank side with the brake valve and the reversing lever, and you have the other tank side which has a hole for the handbrake. There are a couple of holes to drill before you start, and you need to make sure that this piece is the thing that everything builds up on. There are 4 holes to be drilled in this, which are 1.8 millimeters, and what I did, they've got dimples. I drilled them out 1 millimeter and then drilled them out 1.8, so you get them relatively concentric, relatively vertical. It does mount that way up with the raised bits on the upper side. The other thing with this is, before you start, make sure, use your bit of glass or whatever you've got to build on, make sure that you've got a good flat surface, and make sure that this piece is flat, otherwise it won't fit in the cab correctly. So I've done all that. All these castings had a certain amount of flash on them, and I've used various pieces of equipment. I started off with a razor saw for some of the bigger bits. I've used a knife, I've used a small needle file, I've used one of Christina's nail files, and I've also used a steel brush in a Dremel on a low speed just to buff everything up. So what I'll do now is I'll reposition the camera. We're going to solder, white metal solder, the parts to the build plate, and then we will fit the 2 brass parts, which are the handbrake handle and the regulator handle, and that will be that. That will be part 6 done. I'll just reposition the camera and then we'll crack on. Right, so much the same as yesterday when we did some white metal soldering. We have set the soldering iron to 315 degrees centigrade, which seems to be okay for soldering this white metal, or it's pewter, because it's from DJH. So what we'll do, there is no particular order for this, but you want to make the cab interior as neat and tidy as possible. And what we'll do is we'll start just by trying the parts first. So that's the side with the reverser on, and there are raised parts on the substrate for you to actually gauge whether the part is seated. So we'll do that, and then we'll have to put the back head, and once there you're happy that they can be fitted square, that looks okay. Not an awful lot of room in a G5 cab by the look of it. So what we'll do now is we'll go away and we will tack solder these parts, start tack soldering these parts. So we've got our flux over here. I'll just collect it, and a bit of white metal solder. Like I said, there is no particular order for this, but just try it out and get something that you're relatively happy with for doing in terms of assembly. Ooh. Okay, so all I've done is I've done a little tack solder joint in the corner just to position it. It isn't vertical, and it's just to hold it while it's come apart. So we'll try and get it vertical. And it doesn't look too bad. It is leaning in a bit, but it's not too bad. Incidentally, if you're not happy or particularly au fait with soldering white metal, there are a couple of very good videos on the Gauge Guild YouTube channel which are available to the public, that you can watch to give you tips and help you with techniques. So it's come off. Try it again. It's the one thing about a white metal joint is that it's quite brittle. We'll try it again. Just move this down a bit. Make sure the part is seated all the way around. In fact, we'll put a little bit of solder here just to help. That's okay. So if you can see from behind, there is a little bit of a gap at the bottom because it's a round top firebox. So that seems to be okay for the moment. Hopefully it won't fall apart. Try this one. Right, this one needs a little bit of fettling at the bottom to get it to fit properly. I'll just do that now. The secret with white metal bits is to just keep trying, keep testing, keep doing trial fits as you progress, and that way you stand a reasonable chance of getting it all to fit together in the end. So we'll do the same with this one. We'll put a little bit of white metal solder in the corner, in the two corners, just to hold it in place. So they're roughly parallel, and then the back head should sit in between them like that, like that. So I'll get my sausages out of the way, hold on, like that. So that's not too bad. Just keep adjusting it until you have something that you're happy with. So, and then what I'll do now is I will go around the base of the side tanks. So we'll just go around the base of the side tanks with some more solder just to hold them in place. Try and keep the soldering as neat as possible. That's okay. So that's inside that tank. Don't worry too much about any gaps at the bottom of the tanks here, because there are a set of steps, and they will, well, sorry, not a set of steps, there's a floor casting which will largely hide any gaps that you have. So just keep the soldering inside as neat and tidy as you can. You don't want loads of extra solder around if you can help it. And that's the other side. Sorry, autofocus again. Right, and as I mentioned, there is a cab floor casting, but I am not going to fit this yet, but I'll just position it in place, and you can see that it does cover up the holes at the bottom of the side tank extensions. So we'll just take that out. And the only other white metal casting that we need to fit is this, which is the cab rear. So I'll just fit this in place. Just try it. This needs to be vertical as well. Now, you may think that there's not an awful lot of room left to get in and paint this, but I think there is. I think you've got plenty of room to get in there to paint this. Of course, when I come to do it, that will prove to me whether I'm correct or not, but I think that you can get in and paint it, because the big benefit of having a module like this is that it's removable, so you can take it out of the locomotive as a whole, as a large piece, and you can manipulate it away from the locomotive. It's not like a single backhead where you fit the backhead in the locomotive and it has to go in, and once it's in, it's largely there and there's not a lot that you can do about it to remove it. So this is altogether quite a good idea in terms of being able to finish the locomotive nicely, because you'll be able to take this out. After all, it only fits in with 4 screws, and you'll be able to take it out to detail it, to paint it. Right, just a little bit more flux in that corner. And there we have it. That's all there is really to it. So now we'll just try the steps in again, just to make sure that the steps fit. And they don't quite fit, but I won't force it because it's white metal, and there's every chance that it'll get bent if you force it. Now, the fact that these don't fit is not a major problem, because you can easily fettle this bit so that it fits inside. It is relatively easy to get it past all the fittings inside, but it will need a certain amount of filing to get it to fit. So you can try various orientations to get it to fit. See, it's almost fitted. It's just a little bit of an angle. Now, I could sort that out now, but I'm not going to bother, because I'm going to paint the cab, the inside of the cab, and I'm going to paint the cab floor differently, because after all, this bit is wood, so we'll paint it differently. Now, all you've got left to do now is fit the couple of bits, and you've got a handbrake handle which is a lost wax casting, and that fits in a 1mm hole on this side. And you've got the regulator, which is also a lost wax casting, and that fits in a 1.7mm hole in the back head, which I've already drilled. So again, much the same as yesterday, we'll get the 145 degree solder off the shelf, preferably without seeing on Boris when we sit down. Here we go. And flux, both bits. We'll turn the soldering iron up just briefly. And it's going up nicely, and this is 145. And we'll put it back down to 315. We'll do the handbrake handle first, and I've made sure that the shank hasn't been cut off too short, so you can see it does protrude slightly through. A bit of flux, and so quite a generous dollop of solder underneath, and it is fixed on top. And we will do the regulator handle, which hangs down vertically, and a slightly different technique with this one. We shall put some white metal solder on the casting, flux the hole and the rear. And indirect heat, so we will heat the lost wax casting up, and with a bit of luck, if it is all good, it will attach itself to the back head casting. So you want the lever pointing down, turn the heat up a little bit. So just leave the soldering iron on the lost wax casting until the solder underneath melts and it will seat itself. Turn it up a bit more. When you do this, be very careful because there are various protuberances in the cab interior which are white metal, and if you accidentally get your hot soldering iron on them, you will damage the part. So keep all the white metal bits to one side. Right, that should be full blast now. And that looks seated to me. And then just to finish it off, we'll put a blob of white metal solder on the back. Doesn't matter that we've got it on full blast. And that's it. And we'll just check that it seats okay and it goes there on the footplate, and the rear of the locomotive fits over the top. And just for the sake of completeness, we will try that. I'll just get the bit out of the box. So you remember that we had this huge casting and it fits over the top. Well, we hope it fits over the top. Well, it doesn't quite. Oh yes, it does. Oh no, it doesn't. I'm not going to force it. When we come to do this in the next video, it will need a certain amount of fettling to allow it to fit over this. But for the moment, we can say that that is where the cab goes on the foot plate, and that's part 6 finished. When we come back, we will do page 7, which is basically the boiler and the rest of the body. So thank you for watching, and watch for another video soon.